Hello everybody. Rumours of my death are seriously overrated. Sorry it's been a bit of a gap. I was hoping to start again with being in our offices and being able to do things from there. It's not quite there. We picked some office furniture today, so we're getting there. Hopefully be there in the next week or three. But I finally caught up on things. Oh, you can't really see. This is the dining room table is covered in tenancy agreements and various other things. But yeah, so I wanted to get going again. I sincerely apologise, those of you who've contacted me to remind me that I didn't do the last blog on forgiveness before I went to Fiji. So I'm very, very sorry about that. I've just had so much on my plate, but without excuse otherwise. So I thought tonight that that's what we'd do, is I'd finish that off, and then tomorrow I'll talk to you. Got a whole lot of quite groovy stuff happening with Massive Action, and particularly for many of you are in the forum, and just a whole lot of good stuff happening and things that you'll be interested in being involved with. So we'll be back into property for a while from tomorrow. Just quickly, before I get into the forgiveness thing, just a comment that there's all kinds of stuff in the media about what's going on, and lots of mixed messages with property and stuff. But I just want to encourage you, don't panic. I'll talk about some of that over the next little while. But there's still good deals out there, and I've recently sold a couple of properties on Trade Me that I'd never done before, or certainly not as simply. They just sold like that. So in spite of everything that's going on, there are people out there with money. I had a property that I traded for a little over $1 million, and the guy settled on it about 2 weeks ago and just sold it for 1.25. So don't panic. Those of you who are considering trading, don't be put off by the fact that things are, how they are. We'll give you some help on how to stay safe and how to keep moving forward. But anyway, if you cast your mind back or go back and look at the vlogs, we've talked a lot about unforgiveness. We talked about the need to forgive others, and started to take you through the process, or really have done the bulk of the process on forgiving yourself. And so just want to really wrap that up. And it's a funny thing that we often, I was thinking just earlier that, we say things like, oh, he loves himself. And it's a derogatory statement. And yet Jesus talked a lot about the fact that you can only love others to the degree that you love yourself. And the problem is we don't understand what loving ourselves is. And in reality, when we say about somebody, oh, he loves himself, it may just mean that he's very confident, but more often than not, it means that he's arrogant and self-centered, which more than likely means that he hates himself, not that he loves himself. And so the reason that it's important to forgive ourselves, and we have to deal with unforgiveness towards ourselves, is that it frees us to feel good about ourselves. It frees us to be able to process things normally without a filter on about why it has to be bad because we're involved. In the same way, I had one email in particular springs to mind from a lady who had never forgiven, I might have mentioned it before, never forgave her dad for dying. And when she did that, she just said, I feel different. I've seen her recently, and she was always an attractive lass, but just looks fantastic. And I believe that's because she's freer in her spirit than she's been before, than she'd perhaps ever been before. So it's really critical. I don't know if, as we went through, I got you to write down the things about things that you had done and things that were done to you. And so we're dealing now with the things that you might have done, or the things that give you cause to generally just feel bad about yourself and to hold grudges against yourself. This is a pandemic that I find everywhere. And at our event in November, we will touch on this, because it just destroys you. So those of you who are following along, and again, I'm sorry for the delay, but you've got your list of things, and I pray that God's been speaking to you as I make it clear all of the time that it's really the only real lasting healing is found in God and in the person of Jesus Christ. And so I just encourage you to ask him to reveal himself to you, and to ask him to speak to you about the things. But irrespective of that, if you're looking at this a bit more analytically, that's cool. It's God's problem to reveal himself to you, not mine. But what you have to do, it's really simple in the sense that having done the work that we've done up till now, the last thing is really to sit down. I suggest you sit down with God. Failing that, sit down with yourself and look at the things and just choose to forgive yourself for the things that you have done, regardless of whether it's something quite heinous or quite serious, or whether it's stuff that is minor. Most of these things are going to fall into two categories, where you have done something to somebody else and you've never been able to forgive yourself, or there'll be things where you just beat up on yourself and you harbour grudges against yourself, incredibly self-destructive. So I think with what I've covered already in this whole series, you now know enough to be able to look at those things. Okay, that is not me. I'm not a nasty prick. I have an issue. I have problems in my life or whatever. But I'm actually okay. I'm not a bad person. And from a strictly technical point of view, we're all bad people and that we all do things wrong. But you'll know what I mean. If you've got this unhealthy self-hatred going on, first step, you have to choose to forgive yourself in the same way that if somebody had hurt you or wounded you, and it was very difficult for you maybe to choose to forgive them, you've got to choose to forgive yourself and begin to process that right now and say, I'm going to forgive myself for this. I'm going to forgive myself. I'm not going to harbour a grudge against myself for this. As I'm talking, I'm thinking, well, we'll do one more night on this. We'll do another night tomorrow to finish it off, because I want to give you some positive stuff to replace the negative stuff that you're going to deal with. All right, so that's it. That's what you need to do, and you need to do that with God's help, or with God as you find Him. But to begin to believe the truth about yourself, and that's what we'll cover off tomorrow. But the other area is that where you've done things and you can't forgive yourself for them. Now, depending on the circumstances, on what the event was or whatever the situation was, and it's a subjective thing, I can't give you a formula for what I'm about to say, but in some cases you may need to go to that other person and put it right. There's a Christian jargon term for it called restitution. And that's what you need to do. So if you've done something, if you've stolen something from somebody and you've never been able to forgive yourself for doing it, it plays on your conscience, it still plays on your mind after all these years, hunt the person down, write to them, go and see them and tell them what you've done, ask for forgiveness from them, and put it right. If you stole something, find out what it's worth and fix it. There is no real freedom from this in any other way. God promises to forgive us to the same extent that we forgive others, but He expects us still to take responsibility for our actions. If you were involved in a lifestyle where you've contracted AIDS and you become a Christian, many times the AIDS still kills you. There are consequences for our actions. And so the opportunity that you have is to gain a clear conscience and to be able to really forgive yourself, is to actually put it right. That's why we're wired. God created us with a conscience, you see, and it never goes away, whether you believe in God or not. So when you've done something years ago and you've never put it right, God is speaking to you through your conscience and saying, you've never put this right. And it will, if you remember when I first started this whole series, it was on the premise of that you need to get your head in a good place and your heart in a good place to invest successfully. So if you're living with guilt of having done something and you can't forgive yourself for it, I've talked a bit before about this in terms of forgiving others and getting forgiveness from others. But now the same thing is true if it's with yourself, whatever it may be. You might have had a marriage that ended and your kids have suffered. You need to go and put that right with those kids to the extent that you can. You might have stolen something, you might have done this, you might have done that. So if you can't forgive yourself, if you just say, Dean, I just can't do it, then what you need to do is look at the event and say, okay, what can I do to fix this? If people are not around, you don't know where they are or they're dead, write a letter to them. You're never going to post it, but at least get it out and get it written down. So what we're looking to do is bring everything that's come to your mind, everything that you've written down, that causes you to dislike yourself or to hate yourself. In some cases it's events, in some cases it's an undefined feeling. But wherever it is clear, and ask God to reveal the events to you, wherever it's clear, go and do what you can to make it right, and then choose to forgive yourself and not to walk in that anymore. Now, I run into a bit of a brick wall with this, because there reaches a point where I cannot give you any more advice without just talking about the power of God to heal you and to set you free. Because at the end of the day, the problem with psychology and psychiatry and many other means of trying to deal with our issues intellectually is that they never know what to do with guilt and shame and sins, things that have been done wrong. And so a lot of them will get you to put the guilt and the shame onto somebody else, and that's all right, but never really brings healing. It might help you get your life more under control. And so, as I say, I reach a point where what happened is that God sent his only Son to earth, and Jesus went and died on the cross and rose again. And when he died, he took your sin, he took your guilt, and he took your shame. And he defeated the powers of darkness, the powers of Satan. There is a heaven and a hell, there is a God and a Satan. So to really be free, to really walk in the freedom that Raywin and I enjoy, and I know many of you are Christians who watch this, but is to understand that when a thought might come of feeling guilty about something, I can say, Satan, I'm not listening to that, it's a lie. God says that I'm his son, and I've been set free, and I've been forgiven through the shedding of his blood, and I have a relationship with him. So I'm not listening to that thought. Get lost. And that's where real freedom comes from. That's where real healing comes from. The principles that I share with you are sound in one sense, whether you're a Christian or not, because God created you, so therefore principles will work, but there reaches a point where they can only be really achieved by appropriating God's power. And it's interesting, I was speaking at an event on the weekend, and there was a woman there promoting The Secret. And those of you who read my blog, which is most of you, will know what I thought of it, but it was terribly sad and very interesting to see all these people in this room just totally embracing this nonsense and not understanding for 1 second that with the way they were being told to visualize, they're actually inviting evil spirits to come and inhabit them and to attack them. And then the woman's telling them to teach it to their children. But what that tells me is that the world is full of spiritually hungry people. And you're watching this because you're spiritually hungry. And so I have to tell you the truth, that it's found in Jesus Christ. And unfortunately the church has done a terrible job of representing him, and the church has done, there's been such evil things and terrible things done in the name of God, but that's been done by, in many cases, by his followers and not by him. And I'm talking specifically about Christians and Jesus Christ. I'm not defending Islam or anything. They worship Satan. They don't realise it, but they're not worshipping the true God. So many of you have been inoculated against Christianity because of what you've seen in your parents, what you've seen in your family, what you've heard about. So, as I've said many times before, ask God to reveal himself to you. Say, Jesus, this Dean character reckons that you're real. I don't know that you are. I don't think you are, but I'm willing to be made willing to believe that maybe you exist, but that can only happen if you show yourself to me. And ask him to deal with the things that are really still stringing you along. I know from the emails I've got that many of you followed this series that it works, yeah? And you're actually finding freedom. And if you're not, it's because the only thing that will set you free ultimately is God. And the funny thing is that even though you won't care so much about wealth or about other things, but you'll find that as you are made whole, you get connected up to God, he'll tell you what he wants you to do with your life. It's way cool. And you'll find you'll have a much more successful life. So, there you go. So we'll have one more session on this. I wasn't going to, but I really need to. I just want to give you some stuff that will give you some positive stuff to replace some of the lies that you've been dealing with. And then we'll get onto property. It's good to be back, and thank you again very much for your encouragement and kind words and never-ending emails. And I'm sorry if I've been a bit slow getting back to you with various things lately, but I'm just run off my feet. But the blogs are back, so we'll see you soon. God bless.